Imagine it's a cold winter day in 1989. You and a couple of buddies are huddled around a tiny CRT TV, NES controllers in hand, and ready to play. The room is filled with sharp beeps and digitized voices of a game shouting, "Blades of Steel." And instantly you realize you're not just playing hockey, you're throwing punches, setting up power plays, and hearing the game actually talk to you. Now let's be real, it wasn't the NHL, at least not yet, but it sure felt like it. Before EA Sports ruled the rink, one game captured the heart and chaos of hockey. It was fast, it was gritty, and it was a total blast to play. This is the story of Blades of Steel, the groundbreaking hockey game that brought action and attitude to the NES. Now the story of Blades of Steel began in 1987, but not at home, actually in an arcade.
Blades of Steel.
Of course, in the 80s, arcades were the normal social hub. Bright lights, rows of machines, and the sounds of coins dropping and button mashing. And this is where Konami would have games already established like Contra and Gradius, but they decided to try something new, a hockey game, and that game was Blades of Steel. Now the arcade version featured large detailed sprites, fast, skating animations, and something few other arcade sports games had at the time, voice sample. Players heard the famous lines like,
"They're going at each other. You're gonna pay. Hey, you're brain damaged. He's at me. All right."
Now these weren't just fun, they were revolutionary for the time. The Konami's goal here wasn't realism, it was to capture the thrill of hockey, the speed, the hits, the tension, and it actually worked. The game attracted players not just for its gameplay, but for its arcade energy. And one of the coolest parts of Blades of Steel was not actually the hockey, but when a fight broke out. So while Blades of Steel captured some audiences in the arcade, it wouldn't really take off till it got a home version. And this was the game changer. Most kids will remember the 1988 version of Blades of Steel on the NES. And even though the graphics were scaled down from the arcade, it did not lose its soul, to say the least. The NES version wasn't just a simple copy, it was a careful translation of the arcade feel into something that could fit into an 8-bit cartridge. So at home you could pick from one of 8 fictional teams, because at the time we didn't have NHL licensing just yet. You had New York, Chicago, LA, Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton, Montreal, and Minneapolis. And each team had different color schemes, giving the illusion of unique identities, even though the players' stats were mostly balanced. But back then, this didn't matter. The excitement came from who you were playing with and against. And the game included a couple of modes. You had 2-player mode for heated couch battles, a single-player tournament mode that let you climb the ranks, and it also had dynamic passing and manual shooting. So you weren't just button mashing. And it did have loosely based rules, and the rules here really didn't apply. I mean, you did have the occasional face-off and penalties, but outside of that, that's pretty much it. And yes, it had fighting in it. Not just bumping players, but real pixelated brawls, just like the arcade. And for many fans, this is what Blades of Steel is remembered for, the fights. If 2 players collided repeatedly while chasing the puck, it would trigger a minigame. The camera zoomed in, and suddenly it wasn't hockey anymore. It was a mini street fight. It was punch or be punched. And yeah, they had a block button, but who used that? We just threw some punches. And you could punch for the face or punch to the gut. And you actually had to time your attacks and dodge incoming hits. The loser sent to the penalty box, leaving their team short-handed. That meant a power play for the other side. Now this mechanic right here added a layer of strategy. Do you go for the puck, or do you risk trying to start a fight to trigger a power play? It was actually pretty cool at the time, and it was pure 1980s NES gold. Now one of the cool things about the NES is most NES games had catchy music and a few sound effects, but Blades of Steel did something special. It talked to you. Using clever programming, Konami squeezed in several voice clips including Face Off, the classic line at the intro, Blades of Steel, Get the Pass, and a couple of others. And these weren't just cool, they were mind-blowing for 1988. Hearing your game speak created a deeper connection. It felt more alive and more realistic than any other sports game of its time, at least for the NES. And these voices became instantly recognizable. If you went to school or somebody heard you say, Blades of Steel, they knew you were talking about the NES version. But Konami just didn't stop with the gameplay and fights. They added small touches that made the game feel complete. You actually had halftime intermissions which showed animated crown scenes or even mini commercials for other Konami games like Gradius. And that kind of cross-branding promotion was rare back in the day, and that was super clever of Konami to do something like that. Then you also had shootout mode that allowed you to practice penalty shots, offering fun outside the main game. And when you won the game, you were rewarded with a victory screen, adding a feeling of closure, something many esports also ignored as well. And all these extras added replay value and gave the game a signature identity. Now, let's be real, the game's pretty short, but I think most people like me actually played Blades of Steel for the first time on NES. Now, there were some people that played in the arcade. I actually do remember seeing Double Dribble in the arcade, and Blades of Steel, I never saw Blades of Steel arcade. Now, if you did see it, Blades of Steel actually in the arcade ran on a trackball system. It had trackball and a couple of buttons, and it would convert over to home just to play on the control, because actually back then, to my knowledge, NES didn't have a trackball. But they did have some quirky peripherals. Maybe they did, but I never saw that. But the NES was actually pretty good at translating those controls, because there was quite a few games that had trackballs back in the day and then translated to the NES flawlessly. So this was one of the games, thank God, it did a good job on that. Now, Blades of Steel would go on to have many ports, and we'll take a quick look at some of the ports. And I think I missed a couple in here. I just couldn't get access to those games, but the ones I could was the majority of them. So I actually played a couple of games of each one. So I'll kind of give you my take, and we'll basically compare it to what's more familiar, the NES version. So first up, let's start with the arcade. Now, the arcade version of Blades of Steel is actually pretty cool. In my opinion, this is probably the best version of the game, because these obviously is the best graphics and the best gameplay. But what makes this game extra cool to me is I love the fight scenes in this. I mean, my favorite being the part where that guy's like, "You're gonna pay." I mean, that's just gold right there. And they do have a couple of lines. I'll play a couple of them for you right here where you're ready to score off with the guy. They do have some intros, I guess, so to speak.
Going at each other, you're gonna pay! Hey! You're brain damaged! He's at me! They're going at each other! Come on, you chump! Hey! You're brain damaged! Kick his butt! Oh! They're going at each other! Hey! You're brain damaged! You're gonna pay! He's at me!
And overall, the game does feel like a complete hockey game. Now, yeah, it is an arcade game. It's arcade. It's not 100% realistic like you would get with later Genesis ports of like the NHL series on Sega Genesis. But for what it was at the time in 1988, it was pretty freaking awesome. So next up, we got the NES version, and this is going to be the one that most people are familiar with. And this one was a very good conversion of the arcade. It did keep a lot of the voice samples in it. You actually had a halftime show, and passing in this game, well, to me, shooting in this game was a little better, because if you look right here, you got that arrow that goes up, and you have that in the arcade as well. You could actually aim a little better, in my opinion, on the NES version when you took a shot. And they did translate the fight scenes pretty good. I mean, you had the upper attack, the lower attack. I mean, obviously they scaled down the graphics for it, but it was still fun, especially now with the computer, you can beat him up pretty much all day long. But if you played with another player, it did add some kind of depth to the fight. Overall, a super fun experience on the NES. I mean, I felt like it moved smooth like it was supposed to. But it wasn't too fast like we're going to see in later iterations of this game, where you can't even control or understand what's even happening. But on the screen right here, I feel like they did a good job with the flow of the game. Next up, we got the Amiga, and the Amiga is a very good version of this game as well. The Amiga controls are pretty similar to the NES version. You have the shoot button, you have the pass button. So basically it operated with two buttons like the NES. And it's arguable to say which one plays better. I like the NES version only because to me it's a little smoother and a little faster. And plus the music is kind of debatable which one you like better. So I'm going to play the ending sequence at the end of a match. You can hear the music. It's the same tune and the same animations, but you can have the deciding factor of which one looks better. Me personally, I like the NES better, but part of me still likes the sound of the Amiga better, so that's debatable. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. So next up, we got a Game Boy port that came out in 1991, and this is more true to the Blades of Steel that we would see from the NES and the arcade. And this one plays pretty good. It's a little slow, but for what it's worth, I feel like it's a good attempt at the Blades of Steel on the go, because this one kind of tried to hang true to the arcade. They cut the fight scenes, that mechanic's not in this game, but they pretty much put everything else in there. So basically it runs a little bit slower, but overall pretty decent try for the Game Boy. And there are a couple more Game Boy games we're gonna look at real quick. And while they are improved on this one, they do come with their Achilles heel. Now, if we're looking at the 1990, we'll look at both of the 1999 and the 2000 version, because they're pretty much almost the same game. And the problem with the game is it moves erratically. And also in this version of the Game Boy game, the computer controlled AI is ridiculous. They are relentless. I mean, you'd be doing good to clear the ball and get it on the other side of the ice, because they are nonstop slamming your opponent. And I couldn't trigger the fight scene. I know it's in the game, but I couldn't get one to go because all I did was pretty much get knocked down and bullied by the computer in this. And another thing that ticked me off with this game was the fact that the characters move so randomly. Like if you're going down, you'll fly sometimes super fast, and other times you'll go super slow. And there are character stats in this game, I believe, so maybe that makes a difference why some characters are super fast and some are super slow. But it's just hard to even keep track of who's got the puck half the time, because the screen's so small and the characters are moving so fast. So it's kind of tough. If you watch this clip right here, it's kind of confusing on what's even going on the screen. But for what it's worth, I will say they are consistent with the frame rate as far as a smooth experience. It's just sometimes the characters get out of control and move a little too fast. And another thing, they do have a cutscene when you actually score a goal, but it gets old real quick. You see this over and over and over again. But overall, pretty decent attempt for the Game Boy. And finally, we'll round it out with the N64 version. And this is Blades of Steel 1999 for the N64. And I feel like they did a really good job here. The only thing I'd say with this one, I don't think you can trigger fight scenes in this one. I tried my best to do it. I couldn't do it. But at the same time, they do have some pretty good graphics for the time. It's a typical, mid-90s graphics. That's when Digitized was kind of getting with the big blocky graphics. Outside of that, though, I feel like the sound effects are pretty good. The game does talk well. The game's voice sprites are pretty good. And it's kind of an arcadey game, but I do like how they trace the puck when you hit it and stuff like that. You can actually keep an eye on where the puck's going. Also, I like how they put the national anthem in there. That was a nice touch how they got them at the beginning when they're lined up. And the gameplay mechanics are pretty crisp on this game. I mean, the passing's pretty cool, and they do have some over-the-top checks. I mean, the computer will check you without thinking about it twice. And this one also has a tournament mode and a season mode and everything else. So overall, I think this isn't the best NHL game you can play, but for what it's worth on the N64, I think it's pretty fun. The controls are on point, with the controls being tight and responsive. The passing is pretty good, and the AI is at just enough hard enough difficulty without being too flipping hard. So yeah, overall the N64 version, the only problem with it is I feel like you're playing a hockey game, but there's nothing that tells me that it's Blades of Steel. I think they just kind of used the Blades of Steel name, but outside of that though, overall, pretty decent game. So let's talk about the legacy of Blades of Steel. Now, today, Blades of Steel is seen as one of the greatest NES sports hockey games ever made for the NES. It showed that sports games didn't have to be boring or slow. They could be fast, fun, chaotic, and packed with personality, and helped pave the way for future titles like NHL 94, and that was the heyday of Genesis Sports, in the 90s. Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey, games like On the Ice, and so forth. So let's never forget, when you hear somebody say the phrase, Blades of Steel, it still can bring a smile to anyone who grew up in the NES era. It may not have been as popular as the phrase double dribble, but it still had its own following. So what I think about Blades of Steel? Blades of Steel for me was super fun, because back in the day with NES you had ice hockey, and that game right there was awesome too, but it was kind of toned down. It had the little chibi sprites with the guys with the big heads. You had the normal looking guy, the tall skinny guy, and the fat guy, powerhouse guy, and it was a fun game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love the music and ice hockey. That was a cool game. But Blades of Steel kind of gave you that more professional, more polished look, more realism, if you will. And it also, like I said, it talked. The ice hockey didn't talk, because you didn't really have a ton of hockey games for the NES back then. So the main ones were Blades of Steel and ice hockey. So it also had the fight scenes, because you had the fight scenes in ice hockey as well. They get in that big crowd and people just fly. But Nintendo keeps everything clean. Blades of Steel just got gritty. You straight stealing the person in the face, punching in the stomach or whatnot, and knock them down. So to be clear, I think they are two separate games for two separate audiences. If you're looking for a quick blast of fun and just with cartoony graphics and just safe fun, ice hockey was a great game, and I love ice hockey. But I feel like Blades of Steel was more if you wanted to go into that semi professional competitive level of hockey, where it's a little more controlled and it makes a little more sense, then definitely Blades of Steel. But But sometimes I feel like Blades of Steel actually gets overshadowed by Double Dribble. That's just facts. That's just life. I mean, more people think of Double Dribble as opposed to Blades of Steel, but still, Blades of Steel was definitely fun. And if you never played Blades of Steel for the NES or the arcade, definitely give them a try. The Game Boy versions, you're not gonna miss much if you don't play those. That's gonna do it for Blades of Steel. But let me know in the comments below your experience with Blades of Steel. Were you one of the ones the first time played it in the arcade, or were you like me and most people the first time we played it was the NES, or did you play the Amiga version, which again, like I said, another excellent port of the arcade as well, or did you play the N64 version? So that's gonna do it for this one, guys. As always, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you. Catch you next episode. Thanks for watching.